Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a complete, fully structured masterclass on a framework that's literally fascinated, shocked, and guided leaders for decades. We're talking about Robert Greene's definitive 48 Laws of Power. If you're looking for a clear, highly organized breakdown of every single tactical maneuver in this legendary book, well, you're in the exact right place. So, how do you actually master the game of power? It's a question that's kind of consumed humanity for millennia, right? The sources we're exploring today reveal a pretty hard truth. True power isn't about being the loudest in the room or the most aggressive. It absolutely requires an amoral, deeply strategic mindset and a total mastery of human psychology. It's really about viewing social dynamics as a giant chessboard. And the source material doesn't just invent these rules out of thin air. It actually distills 3,000 years of history from master strategists, think everyone from Sun Tzu to Machiavelli to Bismarck, into actionable, concrete laws. It's literally a historical playbook. Now, before we jump into the laws themselves, we really need to set up the foundational mindset. Power is relational, patience is supreme, intentions absolutely must be hidden, and you have to learn to read people. But here is the absolute most important takeaway. Emotions are the enemies of power. Anger, fear, and even love act as serious vulnerabilities in this game. Because if you react emotionally, you become predictable, and whoever is predictable can easily be controlled. Okay, 48 laws is a massive amount of information to process. So to make this explainer highly tactical, we've organized Greene's free work into 5 digestible phases: foundations of power, defensive posturing and survival, strategic isolation and information, appearances and calculated action, and finally, active offense and fluidity. Let's get right into it. Phase 1, foundations of power, establishing baseline social competence and protecting your status. Okay, let's dive into this first cluster where self-preservation is absolutely key. We've got Law 1, never outshine your superiors. Law 2 warns against trusting friends too much. You actually want to learn to use former enemies. Law 3 demands you completely conceal your intentions, while Law 4 dictates always saying less than necessary. But the absolute cornerstone here is Law 5, guard your reputation with your life. A strong reputation essentially does all the heavy lifting for you. It intimidates your opponents before a battle even begins. And this brilliantly illustrates our first point. Nicolas Fouquet, who was the finance minister under King Louis XIV, learned Law 1 the hard way. He threw a party that was so magnificent it completely humiliated the king. His reward? Well, he spent the rest of his life in prison. Showing off your talents might feel great, but it triggers severe insecurity in leadership. Always make your superiors feel comfortably superior. Moving on, Laws 6 through 9 really dictate the terms of engagement. You must court attention at all costs for Law 6. Get others to do the work while you take all the credit for Law 7, and literally force your opponents to come to you for Law 8. But crucially, Law 9 states, win through actions, never argument. Arguing just stirs up a bunch of resentment and ego. Winning through a visible, undeniable action is infinitely more powerful, and honestly, it saves you immense amounts of energy. Phase 2, defensive posturing and survival, defending yourself against emotional infection and retaining leverage. So this phase is all about emotional and social leverage. Law 10 warns that misery is highly infectious, so avoid the unlucky at all costs. Law 11 tells you to keep people constantly dependent on you. Law 12 suggests using selective honesty to disarm your critics. And Law 14 advises acting like a friend while secretly gathering intelligence as a spy. But definitely remember Law 13. Human beings are overwhelmingly motivated by self-interest. Don't go appealing to gratitude or mercy. You have to show them exactly what's in it for them. Now, consider this stark historical fact regarding Law 15. Rome didn't just defeat Carthage. They completely destroyed the city and supposedly sowed the fields with salt so nothing could ever grow there again. If you leave even a tiny spark of life in a dangerous enemy, they will eventually recover and seek revenge. You absolutely must crush them totally. Building right off that concept of total destruction from Law 15, Laws 16 and 17 are entirely about psychological dominance. By intentionally creating absence, like we see in Law 16, you drastically increase your perceived value and respect. Combine that with Law 17, which is cultivating an air of unpredictable terror, and you keep your opponents utterly exhausted. I mean, they can't plan against you if they have absolutely no idea what you're going to do next. Phase 3, strategic isolation and information, managing alliances and gathering critical intelligence safely. Now, what's really interesting about this next set of laws
is how they treat information asymmetry as ultimate power. Law 19 dictates knowing exactly who you are dealing with. Law 20 tells you to commit to absolutely no one so you can maintain your independence, while Law 21 suggests playing the sucker to make your victim feel a bit smarter. But take special note of Law 18. Do not build fortresses. When you're threatened, isolation might seem safe, but it actually cuts you off from vital information and makes you a highly conspicuous target. It is always safer to mingle and stay mobile.
Law 22 proves just how powerful this kind of fluidity can be. The ancient state of Qi was facing total destruction, so they surrendered. But see, strategic surrender isn't about honor, it's just a tool. By yielding, they bought themselves the time they desperately needed to regroup, and they eventually crushed the very state they surrendered to. Perfect timing literally turns weakness into strength. Laws 23 through 26 focus heavily on preserving your image. You have to concentrate your forces for Law 23, play the perfect courtier for Law 24, and constantly recreate your public identity for Law 25. And above all else, Law 26, keep your hands clean. A true master of power maintains a completely unblemished public identity by using intermediaries and scapegoats to handle all the messy, risky tasks. Phase 4. Appearances and calculated action, crafting public spectacles, illusions, and mastering timing. Here is where we enter into active manipulation. Law 27 shows you how to create a cult-like following. Law 28 demands you act with total, unapologetic boldness. Law 29 requires planning all the way to the very end. And Law 31 is all about controlling the options so others are forced to play with your cards. So the crucial point is really Law 30. Make your accomplishments seem effortless. You want to hide the agonizing hard work behind the scenes. When you appear to succeed completely naturally and gracefully, your power just seems absolute. Now, don't get overwhelmed by all these numbers, but you also have to master timing and perception here. Play to people's fantasies for Law 32. Act like a king to actually be treated like one for Law 34. Master the art of timing for Law 35, and use pure disdain to ignore minor enemies for Law 36. But arguably the most dangerous is Law 33. Discover each man's thumbscrew. Look, everyone, no matter how powerful they seem, has a fatal weakness, a deep insecurity or some hidden passion. Finding that psychological lever gives you the ultimate tool to guide or disrupt their actions. Phase 5, active offense and fluidity. Direct neutralization, hegemonic control, and ultimate adaptability. Let's move to these aggressive tactics and see how this all builds. We've got creating compelling spectacles for Law 37, thinking as you like but behaving like others for Law 38, stirring up waters to catch fish in Law 39, despising the free lunch for Law 40, and stepping out of a great man's shadow for Law 41. But when direct offense is absolutely required, you apply Law 42, strike the shepherd and the sheep will scatter. Most troubles within any group or organization can be traced back to a single dominant instigator. Don't waste your energy on the followers, isolate or neutralize the leader, and the whole problem just dissolves. For your final structured maneuvers, you want to work on the hearts and minds of others for Law 43, disarm them with the mirror effect for Law 44, and strongly preach the need for change while actually reforming quite slowly for Law 45. But as you finally reach the top, you really need to heed two profound warnings. Law 46 tells us never to appear too perfect, because that breeds a really toxic, silent envy. And Law 47 warns that in victory, you must know exactly when to stop. Arrogance after a win causes people to overreach, and that creates way more enemies than you can handle. Which brings us to the grand finale. Law 48, assume formlessness. Now, this law essentially overrides all the others. True power isn't just about memorizing some rigid set of rules. It's about ultimate adaptability. If you are rigid, you're giving your enemies a fixed target. But if you are completely fluid, like water, calibrating to every single new situation, well, you become practically impossible to defeat. We're going to leave you with this pretty provocative thought from Machiavelli, who was actually one of the core inspirations for the 48 Laws. It just perfectly captures the amoral, pragmatic reality of power that these sources describe. Like it or not, this game is being played around you every single day, whether you choose to participate or not. So the real question is, now that you finally have the playbook, how will you choose to apply these laws in your own life?